Wednesday, September 10th, 2025. Utah Valley University. The air was thick with anticipation as students and community members gathered for what was supposed to be a night of spirited debate and political engagement. 3,000 people filled the auditorium, eager to hear Charlie Kirk, the outspoken conservative firebrand and founder of Turning Point USA. The event had drawn national attention, with media crews and security on high alert. Kirk was mid-debate, challenging a student on stage, when suddenly, a single sharp crack echoed through the venue, an unmistakable gunshot that shattered the charged atmosphere in an instant. He collapsed on stage, the crowd frozen in disbelief as chaos erupted. Kirk had been shot in the neck by a sniper positioned on a rooftop 200 yards away. Panic swept through the audience as security rushed to respond. Medical personnel rushed in within seconds, performing emergency aid as cameras rolled and horrified onlookers watched. Despite their efforts, Kirk was pronounced dead at just 31 years old, his life cut short in front of thousands. The event, intended to foster debate and dialogue, ended in bloodshed and chaos, leaving the stage abandoned and stained with tragedy. The assassination sent immediate shockwaves through Congress, the Oval Office, and across the nation. Lawmakers and leaders scrambled to respond as the country grappled with the enormity of what had just occurred. Security forces scrambled to secure the scene, locking down the campus and searching for clues. The attack was chillingly professional, executed with precision, clearly not a random act of violence. News of the shooting spread instantly, igniting social media and cable news with confusion, outrage, and horror. The nation watched in real time as details emerged and speculation ran wild. The murder of a major political figure on American soil forced the country to confront its deepening divisions and the dangerous consequences of escalating political hostility. This was not an isolated incident, but the culmination of years of rising political temperatures, angry rhetoric, and a society increasingly on edge. The boundaries of civil discourse had been crossed in the most violent way imaginable. As the nation reeled, questions mounted. Who was responsible? What was their motive? And what would come next? The unthinkable had happened again. America was left searching for answers and for a way forward. To truly grasp the impact of Kirk's death, you must first understand the man behind the headlines. His story is not just about politics, but about vision, drive, and the power of one individual to spark a movement that would ripple across a generation. Kirk was not a politician nor an academic. He was a political entrepreneur. At just 18, he founded Turning Point USA, working out of his parents' garage with little more than determination and a laptop. His early years were marked by relentless hustle, cold-calling donors, and traveling the country to recruit students. His mission was clear: energize young conservatives on college campuses he saw as overwhelmingly dominated by the left. He believed that the future of the country depended on winning the hearts and minds of the next generation. What began as a small operation in a garage quickly grew into a national force. Turning Point USA now boasts over 850 chapters, hosting massive conferences that draw thousands of passionate young people from across the country. Kirk became a conservative celebrity, known for his sharp debate skills, relentless activism, and ability to command a stage. He was a frequent guest on news panels and a sought-after speaker at political events. He was a key Trump ally, a fixture in Republican circles, and an inspiration to countless young conservatives who saw in him a fearless advocate for their values. For his followers, Kirk was a bold and fearless leader, unafraid to challenge the status quo. For his critics, he was a divisive provocateur whose tactics often sparked controversy and heated debate. His events frequently drew protests, and his rhetoric was often accused of fueling the very toxicity and polarization he claimed to oppose. Yet, he never shied away from confrontation, believing it was necessary to make his voice heard. Still, his influence was undeniable. Kirk built one of the most powerful and recognizable youth movements in modern American politics, changing the landscape for a new generation. His assassination left a void in the conservative movement, and a generation in mourning, struggling to process the loss of a leader who had shaped so many lives. Love him or hate him, Kirk's legacy is impossible to ignore. He shaped the political landscape, inspiring fierce loyalty and equally fierce opposition. His death was both a political and personal loss for many, leaving behind questions about the future of the movement he built and the enduring impact of his vision. In times of tragedy, the nation looks to the president for leadership, seeking guidance and reassurance in moments of uncertainty. Hours after Kirk's death, President Trump released a somber video from the Oval Office, addressing the nation with a grave demeanor. He condemned the killing, but quickly blamed the radical left for creating a climate of hate, pointing fingers rather than seeking common ground. Without evidence or a suspect, Trump framed the assassination as a political act to be avenged, stirring emotions rather than calming them. He did not call for unity or calm, but for confrontation, urging his supporters to stand firm against perceived enemies. This response sharply contrasted with President Biden's reaction to Trump's own assassination attempt a year earlier. Biden called for de-escalation and unity, emphasizing the need for healing. Trump's message was tribal, not national, painting a picture of a one-sided war, deepening the divide within the country. He ignored recent violence against Democrats, focusing only on his side's suffering, further polarizing an already divided nation. The president's words signaled that this tragedy would fuel further division, not healing, setting a tone of continued conflict. The Oval Office became a stage for political escalation, not national reflection, as the president's rhetoric intensified. Trump's declarations set the tone. This was not a moment for unity, but for blame, casting a shadow over the nation's hope for reconciliation. The country braced for the fallout, uncertain of what the future would hold in the wake of such divisive leadership. The White House's fury quickly engulfed Congress. Hopes for unity vanished as blame erupted before Kirk's death was even confirmed. Republican leaders accused Democrats. Democrats pointed to recent violence against their own. The House floor devolved into chaos, shouting, accusations, and a breakdown of decorum. Speaker Johnson's attempt at a moment of silence was drowned out by partisan outrage. Accusations of complicity flew across the aisle, turning grief into a weapon. Congress became a theater for animosity, not debate. Even moments of dignity, like Vice President Vance's tribute, were lost in the noise. The institution designed for compromise now amplified division. The murder's aftermath exposed the cracks in American democracy. Empathy became a partisan commodity. The nation's leaders seemed unable or unwilling to find common ground. Kirk's assassination was the latest, most shocking episode in a surge of political violence. Years of eroding norms had turned policy disputes into existential battles. The attack followed a string of warnings: Trump's own near assassination, shootings of Democratic lawmakers, and threats against public officials. Calls for unity after each incident faded quickly, replaced by renewed hostility. Violence was not confined to one side. Extremists on both left and right embraced the rhetoric of war. Election workers, school board members, and protesters all faced threats and violence. Political language grew militaristic, blurring the line between metaphor and reality. Kirk's murder was the logical, terrifying result of this spiral. The climate of hate had become fertile ground for deadly action. America's political battles were no longer just words, they were turning lethal. The nation faced a reckoning with its own rhetoric. As Washington argued, the FBI launched a nationwide manhunt for Kirk's killer. The sniper used a bolt-action Mauser .3006 recovered from the rooftop. Security footage showed a young man in dark clothes, a baseball cap, and distinctive Converse-style shoes. He wore a patriotic T-shirt, an ironic symbol for an anti-democratic act, and walked with a limp. Forensic teams traced the rifle and lifted palm prints from the scene. The FBI offered a $100,000 reward, receiving thousands of tips. The search for the killer dominated headlines, with every detail scrutinized by a nation desperate for answers. The motive remained unclear, but the suspect's profile suggested radicalization by the very climate Kirk helped shape. Utah authorities vowed to seek the death penalty if he was caught. The manhunt became a symbol of America's violent divisions. The country waited, anxious for resolution. Scrutiny quickly turned to the event's security failures. Kirk was a high-risk target, yet only 6 officers were assigned to a crowd of 3,000. Security focused on the auditorium, neglecting external threats and rooftop surveillance. The assassin exploited this gap, setting up undetected on a nearby rooftop. Experts called it a catastrophic failure of planning and imagination. The lack of basic protocols left Kirk vulnerable. Questions mounted. Was it budget, training, or simple underestimation? In a climate of rising political violence, such negligence was inexcusable. The tragedy underscored the urgent need for better protection of public figures. Security lapses had deadly consequences. Most Americans and leaders condemned the assassination, calling for a return to peaceful discourse. Hunter Kozak, the student on stage, issued a heartfelt plea against violence. Yet, a toxic minority online celebrated Kirk's death, posting hateful memes and jokes. Right-wing media amplified these fringe voices, fueling the narrative of a nation at war with itself. A few public figures faced backlash and consequences for callous comments. President Trump and allies seized on these incidents to paint the left as morally depraved. The backlash was swift and bipartisan, reaffirming a consensus against political violence. Still, the existence and exploitation of celebratory voices highlighted the dangers of dehumanization. When opponents are seen as enemies, empathy erodes and violence becomes thinkable. The condemnation was loud, but the whispers of celebration were a chilling omen. Trump's Oval Office address used the language of war, escalating rather than uniting. He transformed a national tragedy into a partisan call to arms, abandoning the role of healer. The nation now stands at a crossroads. One path leads to de-escalation, reflection, and a recommitment to peaceful debate. This requires courage, restraint, and a belief that the republic matters more than any victory. The other path leads to division, retribution, and a cycle of violence. Leaders who weaponize tragedy risk pushing the nation toward disaster. The coming weeks will reveal which path America chooses. The assassin's capture and motives may shape the narrative, but the greater danger is letting this murder push the country over the brink. The war is not declared by one man, but chosen daily by millions. The future of the republic hangs in the balance. The choice is ours: division or democracy.